It was 3:20. Not the kind of time you wake up by choice. Not the kind of time HOA reps show up on your porch. E4831. Badges. Clipboards. Radios. And a crowbar one of them tried to hide under a brochure. They said they were from the HOA. They weren't. And they picked the wrong house. Because behind that front door was my dad, Jeff Thompson, retired Navy SEAL. And this was the night he drew the line. My name's Kyle Thompson, 17 years old, Florida suburb. Until that night, the biggest drama on our street was who left their trash bins out too long. They didn't live in a war zone. We had wind chimes and trimmed hedges, Sunday cookouts, and HOA letters about mailbox paint. Yes, but that night, 3 men showed up pretending to be something they weren't, and trying to use fear, confusion, and authority to get inside our home. What they didn't expect was that behind that door was a man who had already stared down real threats in real war zones. A man who'd buried brothers, held ground, and made peace with the worst outcomes imaginable. And tonight, he wasn't on deployment. He was home. What happened next changed me forever. It changed how I see fear. It changed how I see my father. And it taught me that sometimes the only thing standing between your family and chaos is one man who refuses to step back. This is that story. Let me take you there. To the moment the knock came, the first thing I saw was the orange. Not a jumpsuit, not a traffic cone, but one of those high-vis construction vests, the kind your uncle wears when fixing a leaky roof he's got no business climbing. Except this guy wasn't fixing anything. He was holding a clipboard and standing under our back porch light at 3 a.m. Beside him were 2 others. One with a radio clipped to his belt like he'd just clocked in for airport security. And the third, tall, broad, gloves on, holding something behind his back. That something was a crowbar. My sister, Lily, had seen them first. She'd crept into my room, whispering, "They're at the back door." And her voice, I'll never forget it. Hence, tonight, not the voice of a 10-year-old. The voice of someone who just realized the world isn't as safe as you think it is. I peeked through the upstairs window, lifted the blind just enough, and there they were. 3 guys standing like they belonged, like this was a routine checkup. Except everything about it screamed wrong. Their badges? They looked like they came from a vending machine. Plastic, shiny, orange, clipped to their vests like name tags at a home improvement seminar. And those clipboards? You know that feeling when someone tries too hard to look official? Like a kid in a suit pretending to be the principal? That was them. And it wasn't just that they looked fake. It was how they stood. Too still. Too rehearsed. No real urgency. Just position. Like actors on a stage waiting for their cue. And then came the line. "We've had complaints about your landscaping. We need to inspect the side entrance." At 3:20, I wasn't buying it. And neither was my dad. Because by the time I turned away from the window, he was already moving. No questions. No panic. Just that look. The one I'd only seen in old photos. Until now, I didn't even have to say a word. The second my dad stepped into the hallway and saw my face, the way I was standing, stiff, half whispering, half breathing, something in him changed. It was like watching a light switch flip. 1 second, he was just Jeff Thompson, the guy who grills steaks too well and complains about HOA newsletters. The next, he was something else. So, math. Still. Tense but calm. Quiet but charged. His eyes swept past me, down the stairs toward the back of the house, where the low murmurs were still drifting in through the kitchen window. Too calm to be a real emergency, but too late at night to be legitimate. And in that moment, I saw a look in his eyes I had never seen before. Not even during that one hurricane when the fence blew down and he patched it barefoot during a thunderstorm. No, this was different. This was recognition. Like something old in him had just woken up. He didn't ask questions. He didn't say, "Are you sure?" Or, "Maybe it's just a mistake." He just nodded. Once, turned on his heel, and walked into the master bedroom. He followed, quiet as I could, not because he told me to, but because the whole air in the house had shifted. He moved like a man who already knew the outcome. Not arrogant, not panicked, just prepared. He stepped into the closet, opened the biometric safe, and there it was, the AR-15. Now, I'd seen that rifle before. It wasn't a secret. He kept it locked up tight, talked about it like it was a tool, not a trophy. And the way he handled it, like it was an extension of his own body. He checked it, loaded it, clicked the safety, chambered around, all in total silence. No fuss, no drama, just decades of discipline flowing through muscle memory. Then he turned to me. His voice wasn't loud, wasn't theatrical. It was love. Steady, unshakable. Stay behind me. If they come through that door, we don't talk. We end it. He didn't even blink. I just nodded, because I knew right then and there. This wasn't the first time he'd said those words. Maybe not out loud. Maybe not to me. But he'd lived those words before, in places far scarier than a Florida suburb. And now he was bringing all of that back, for use. Because when Jeff stepped out of that room, he wasn't just armed. He was ready to draw the line. You ever watch someone do something so precisely, so calmly, that it actually makes the air around them feel quieter? That was my dad. Jeff Thompson didn't storm out of that closet like some action movie hero. He didn't yell. He didn't rush. He just walked, AR-15 in hand, shoulder relaxed, breath steady, like he was checking the mailbox. Except this time, the only thing getting delivered was a message. His house was not defenseless. I followed him, a few steps behind, trying not to breathe too loud, like even oxygen might betray the moment. He stopped at the hallway landing, posted up in the shadows. Then aim, didn't bark threats. I didn't say anything yet. I just listened. Yeah, no, daziku hear it. The soft metal tick of someone jiggling the back door handle. The fake HOA men were talking again, too low to hear clearly, but not so low that you'd mistake them for neighbors who got lost. And then, I can line. We've had complaints about your landscaping. Additional landscaping? At 3 a.m., Sid didn't even roll his eyes. He'd just shifted his weight to his back leg, keeping his profile behind the wall, like he was clearing a compound in Kandar instead of standing in a Florida hallway painted eggshell white. Everything about him said one thing loud and clear. Try it. And then the moment came. There was a click, then a creak, then the unmistakable groan of a door frame giving way under pressure. The first guy was in. Just a few steps. Stella pretending. Still clutching his clipboard like it gave him constitutional authority. That's when Dad spoke. Not a yell. Not a threat. Just a command. Last warning. The man froze mid-step. He couldn't see my dad, but he heard him. You could feel it hit. Not just the voice. The weight behind it. The years. The experience. The cold knowledge of what could come next. That's the thing about my father. He doesn't posture. He doesn't bluff. He doesn't fire unless he's decided. So when that first shot rang out, up into the ceiling, a thunder crack that split the stillness. It wasn't panic. It was strategy. Plaster fell like dry snow. The clipboard hit the floor, and the man bolted. Full sprint, like a rabbit that finally realized the wolf wasn't bluffing. But Jeff didn't lower the rifle. He knew better. Because fakers like that, they never come alone. And the next guy? He didn't run. He charged. And that's when everything changed. It's one thing to think danger is coming. It's another thing to hear it step through your door. The first guy thought he was slick. He came in fast. clipboard still in hand, as if that sheet of paper was going to protect him from what was waiting inside. His boots hit the tile like punctuation marks. Heavy, sharp, confident, in that overcompensating kind of way. He didn't say a word, didn't even pretend to knock. Just stepped in, and that's when my dad moved. No warning this time. No more talking. Just action. Unshot. Not of the man, but out. Into the ceiling. It was loud. Like thunder in a small box. The muzzle flash lit up the hallway for half a second. And then the whole room was raining drywall and dust like the 4th of July had come early. The clipboard hit the ground with a pathetic little clack. And so did the intruder's confidence. He turned, fussed, and ran like he'd just remembered he left the stove on in another state. Shoes slipping, porch steps taken in 2 bounds, and then gone into the dark. But my dad still didn't move, didn't lower the rifle, didn't wait, because he knew that where there's one idiot in a vest, there's always another who thinks he's the smart one. And right on cue, the second man came in. This one ducked low. No clipboard, no pretense. Just a guy. He came through fast, like he'd trained for this moment. But not enough. Not for my dad. From the stairs I saw it all in pieces. A glint of metal. A shift in Jeff's posture. A breath. Then 2 shots. Controlled. Precise. Like the trigger was just another heartbeat. The first round hit the guy in the shoulder. His body twisted like someone had yanked a string from his spine. The second propped him. Right there on the tile. Can't harder. His pistol slid across the floor, spinning under a chair like it was ashamed of itself. He made a sound. Not a scream, not a yell. Confusion. Regret. The kind of sound you make when the mask falls off, and you realize you've walked into the wrong house, on the wrong night, facing the very wrong man. And still, Dad stood his ground. No swagger. No Hollywood smirk. Just readiness. From the stairs I couldn't move. I wasn't frozen out of fear. I was watching, processing, understanding. This wasn't chaos. It was control. And I realized something then. Jeff Thompson wasn't reacting. He was leading. Because while my dad held the line in the kitchen, I saw someone trying the dining room window. And this time, it was my move. I don't remember deciding to move. There was no plan. No internal pep talk. No. Be brave, Kyle. This is your moment. It was just movement. Sharp. Fast. Real. I was still halfway up the stairs. Heart pounding. Legs stiff. When I caught something out of the corner of my eye. The dining room window. Just past the fireplace. It creaked. A few inches. Then a hand. Of just one hand. Fingers slow and deliberate, pushing the pane higher like they belonged here. Like this was a routine. My dad was still in the kitchen, rifle trained on the second guy, voice low and steady. Still 2 out there, don't move. But I knew if I waited. I froze. That third man was coming in, and this house didn't have time for hesitation. So I ran. Not smart. Not graceful. Just fast. 3 steps down. Sharp turn toward the fireplace. And there it was. The fire poker. Whack. Iron. Long and ugly in a way that suddenly felt comforting. He grabbed it with both hands. And for a second, just a second, my brain caught up. This is insane. You're 17. You're holding a fireplace tool like it's Excalibur. But that window didn't stop creaking. And that hand kept moving. So I swung. I didn't wait for a better angle. Didn't second guess. I just moved. The poker smashed into the glass with a crack that felt like thunder in my arms. Sharp. Raw. Instant. The window shattered just as the guy outside started to lean in. Face first, shoulders bowed. But the violence of it must have caught him off guard. He screamed, "More surprise than pain," and disappeared into the darkness like a raccoon caught in a floodlight. I stood there, barefoot, in basketball shorts, with a trembling iron rod and a heart that felt 3 sizes too big for my chest. Glass at my feet, breath caught somewhere between my throat and stomach. Behind me, I heard my dad move. Fast, not measured. He turned the corner, weapon still ready, eyes scanning. And then, he saw me, standing there next to the broken window, poker still clenched. And for the first time, he didn't see a kid. He didn't see the son he'd tucked in every night after lights out. Didn't see the one who asked him for rides or got grounded for sneaking snacks into his room. He saw something else. He saw someone who stood the line with him. He didn't say anything. Didn't need to. He just gave me a nod. Aziz, and I nodded back. Because that night, I stopped being someone who needed to be protected. I became someone willing to protect, and just when the silence settled in, we heard the sirens, blue and red bleeding across the neighborhood. And the real story was just beginning. For a few seconds, everything went still. No footstep. No voices. Just the sound of plasters settling and my own heartbeat pounding like a marching band in my ears. And then, off in the distance, sirens. Fainted first, like a memory, then louder, closer, until the blue and red lights bled into the neighborhood. Like a rising tide of reality. Curtains started shifting in windows. Dogs barking up the block. Somewhere, a porch light clicked on, like someone had just remembered how switches worked. And there we were. Me standing near the shattered window with a poker still in hand. Dad in the kitchen, steady and unflinching. He didn't relax. He didn't breathe deep. See, you invented my part. Didn't say it's over. Because he knew the most dangerous moment isn't always the fight. It's what comes after. He stepped forward, placed the rifle gently, on the dining table. Chamber open, safety on. Ben raised both hands, fingers spread. He didn't wait for a knock. He opened the front door himself. 3 squad cars pulled up first. Tires crunching gravel. Ben a canine unit. Lights, movement. The kind of energy that fills the air when people know something serious just went down. But don't know if it's over yet. Cops moved fast. Guns out. Voices sharp. Down where we can see them. Dad didn't flinch. Walt didn't raise his voice. Just, said Claire. I'm unarmed. 2 intruders inside, 1 fled. Kids are safe. The day came in hard. Sweeping the living room, kitchen, hallways. Clearing corners like a scene from a tactical demo. One of them passed me, paused, looked at the poker in my hand, and just gave me a short nod. Didn't say anything. Didn't need to. In the kitchen they found the second man, still on the floor, moaning, clutching his side. Dad had already tied a towel around the guy's shoulder. Tight and clean. It wasn't dramatic. It was habit. Even when someone breaks into his house, Dad doesn't leave anyone bleeding out. That's the part people miss about soldiers. They don't do it because they love, and they do it because they know the cost of it. Backyard. The third guy, the one I'd chased off with the poker, he didn't get far. Slipped near the neighbor's fence, collapsed in the mud. Cuffed without a word. The fourth one? Gone. Vanished into the woods. They brought the dog out, started a track. But it was Florida. Swamps swallow secrets fast. Inside, things were quieter now. Sitting on the couch, still holding the poker like it might sprout into a sword or something. One of the younger officers crouched beside me. You okay? Yeah, I said. I think so. And through it all, Dad never raised his voice. And Verb never told his side first. He just waited until an older officer, Sergeant Stripes and all, walked in and said, "Sir, we need a statement." So, Dad gave one, start to finish. The Vinar, the movement, the warning shot, the break-in, the injuries. No exaggeration, no drama, just facts. When he finished, the officer took a beat, then nodded and said, "From everything I'm hearing, you handled this by the book?" Dad gave the smallest smile I've ever seen. Not proud, not relieved. Us finished. But while the dust was still settling in our living room, the internet was already writing the story. And they got a lot of it wrong. Except the part that really mattered. 48 hours. That's how long it took for our living room to go from plaster dust and boot prints to national headlines. First, it was just a blurb on the local news. Home invasion thwarted in quiet suburb. Retired Navy SEAL steps in. Then came the follow-ups. Think HOA badges used in late-night break-in attempt. Teen helps defend family from armed impostors. And then, then the floodgates opened. Talk shows, podcasts, Reddit threads longer than my high school finals packet. Everybody suddenly had an opinion. Was it legal? Was it too much? Where's a SEAL keeping an AR-15 in the house? Should the HOA be held accountable? Spoiler alert. It wasn't even the real HOA. Turns out those orange badges were knockoffs from a novelty store. The clipboards? Scripted, pre-written with fake citations. One of them had lawn height discrepancy written in crayon. I'm not joking. By the end of the week, the story had a name. The fake inspectors. They even gave Dad a nickname online. The HOA. He laughed when we saw that one. I didn't. Bruno just shook his head and said, "I'm not proud of what happened. I'm just glad no one in this house got hurt." And he meant it. While everyone else turned it into content, my dad just went back to fixing the door. He gave one straight to the point. Damie broke in, responded, "My family's safe. That's all that matters. No dramatics. No clugs. No podcast appearances." He wasn't chasing likes. He wasn't writing a book deal. He was checking the perimeter and replacing the glass. And you know what? That hit me harder than anything else. Because in a world where everyone's shouting, my dad protected us in silence. In that silence, it said everything. If you're still watching this, let me tell you something. Real heroes? They don't go viral. But they go home. They check on their kids. They take out the trash the next morning like nothing happened. They grill steaks because life should keep going. And they don't need to be on the news to know they did the right thing. Because after the story fades, what really matters is what's still standing and who's standing with you. You'd think after something like that, there'd be a moment, a speech, a hug, some big cinematic breakdown with swelling music and a slow zoom out. But life doesn't work like that. Sometimes, it just hands you a patch kit and points to the hole in your ceiling. That afternoon, the one after the sirens, after the cops, after the statement to the press, Dad didn't sit around basking in glory. He climbed into the attic and said, "I'll grab the stepladder and the flashlight." We didn't talk about the break-in, or the gunfire, or the headlines. We talked about the hole. It was a small, clean round puncture right above the living room. A perfect little reminder of the warning shot that turned our house into a war zone for 5 minutes. He said, held the putty knife. I held the flashlight. That was it. No fanfare. No, "I'm proud of you, son." Just work. And in some weird way, it was perfect. Later that night, he rolled the old grill out from the shed. The one with the broken handle and the bent wheel that squeaks like a raccoon in flip-flops. He didn't say, "We deserve this." He didn't say, "We survived." He just lit the coals, unwrapped 2 steaks from butcher paper, and cracked open a can of root beer. Lily came outside first, blanket over her shoulders, still carrying the same stuffed fox from the night before. Kyle followed Emmy, 2 paper plates in hand, but in barefoot, like he hadn't totally re-entered reality. Dad handed me a soda. Didn't look at me like I was some kind of hero. He didn't give a speech about stepping up. He just said, "You did good. That's all." And somehow, that 2-word sentence hit harder than any headline ever could. Because the truth is, Healing doesn't come all at once. It comes in drywall dust, and the smell of steak on the grill, in cold sodas and quiet evenings, in the way your sister finally smiles again, and the way your dad doesn't sleep in the hallway anymore. The world had tried to come in through our door, but it didn't get past the people inside. Because what I learned that night wasn't just about fear or courage. It was about the man who stood where fear stopped and didn't move. I used to think my dad was just a regular guy. You know, the type who grills meat like it's a sport, argues with squirrels, and always forgets where he parked at Home Depot. But that night, he became something else. He didn't just protect the house. He defined it. He didn't raise a gun to feel strong. He raised it because the world crossed a line, and someone had to stand there and say, "No further." See, there's a difference between someone with a weapon and someone with resolve. Jeff Thompson, my father, didn't carry that rifle to threaten. He carried it to draw a boundary, not just around our home, but around everything that mattered. His family, his peace, his legacy. And it hit me later, not during the chaos, not during the patchwork or the steak or the silence. But one morning, a few weeks later, as I walked past his study and caught a glimpse of the folded flag on the wall, the one he never really talked about, that's when it clicked. He'd always been that man. I just never had to see it, until the world gave him a reason to show it. He didn't need medals. He didn't need applause. He didn't even want the attention. All he wanted was for the people he loved to wake up safe, to hear his daughter breathing softly behind a closed door, to hand his son a soda and say, "You did good." That's what strength looks like. When it's real, it's not loud. It's not flashy. It doesn't beg to be seen. It stands, unshaken, unmoving, exactly where it needs to be. Yeah, and now, every time I hear a knock at the door, even in broad daylight, I pause, not in fear, but in awareness. Because now I know what it means to have someone who won't let the world in without permission. Now I know what it looks like, as the woman becomes the line itself. So if you've got someone like that in your life, a quiet protector, a steady presence, a person who stands when others hesitate. Joe didn't wait, because they may never ask to be seen. But they're the reason we sleep through the night. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about ego. It wasn't even about justice. It was about love, and the quiet kind of courage that doesn't just defend a house. It keeps a family whole.